Reality is a thin fabric, worn down by the daily friction of billions of lives. Most people never notice the spots where the weave has grown dangerously translucent. But stay awake long enough, in a place lonely enough, and you might just see what lies underneath. It was 4 a.m. when the world decided to show me its frayed edges. The 24-hour laundromat on 5th Street was a tomb of fluorescent light and the smell of scorched lint. I was the only soul there, sitting on a cracked plastic chair that groaned under my weight. The hum of the machines was a low, vibrating growl that seemed to rattle the very marrow in my bones. Outside, the city was a graveyard of fog and silence, disconnected from the neon-lit box I inhabited. I stared at the row of industrial dryers, watching my clothes tumble in a rhythmic, hypnotic circle. There's a specific kind of madness that sets in at 4 a.m., a blurring of the senses. I looked at the circular glass of dryer number 12, expecting to see my reflection in the dark tint. What I saw instead made the hair on my neck stand up like needles. The reflection didn't show the laundromat I was sitting in. Behind me, in the glass, the rows of chairs were gone, replaced by endless aisles of rusted machinery. The fluorescent lights in the reflection were dim and flickering, casting long, oily shadows across a floor of damp concrete. I turned around quickly, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But the room behind me was normal, just the same empty chairs and the same peeling linoleum. I looked back at the glass, and the distorted, decaying world was still there, mocking the reality I stood in. I approached the machine, my breath hitching as I saw a sleeve of my favorite red flannel shirt pressed against the glass. It looked wrong. The color was drained, replaced by a sickly, bruised purple. The shirt seemed to be snagged on something deep inside the drum, pulling it back toward the dark center. Without thinking, I hit the stop button and pulled the heavy circular door open. A wave of air hit me, but it didn't smell like fabric softener or heat. It smelled of stagnant water, old copper, and something sweet and rotting, like flowers left in a vase too long. I reached into the metal drum, my arm disappearing into the shadow to grab the snagged shirt. The back of the dryer felt cavernous, far deeper than any machine should reasonably be. My fingertips brushed the fabric, but as I pulled, something gripped my wrist with the strength of a vice. It wasn't a hand. It felt like cold, wet leather wrapped tight around my skin. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by a sudden deafening roar of rushing water. The world tilted, the floor beneath my feet vanishing as I was jerked forward into the machine. I didn't hit the back of the drum. I fell through it, tumbling into a cold, suffocating darkness. I landed hard on a surface that was slick and freezing, the air knocked out of my lungs in a sharp gasp. I sat up, shivering, as my eyes struggled to adjust to the oppressive gloom of 7 a.m. I wasn't in the laundromat anymore, or rather, I was in a version of it that had been dead for 1,000 years. The ceiling was lost in a height I couldn't measure, hidden by thick black pipes that dripped a viscous fluid. The rows of machines stretched out into infinity, thousands of them, all vibrating with a low, mournful moan. The floor was covered in 2 inches of water that looked like liquid obsidian, thick, black, and smelling of oil. I stood up, my boots splashing in the ink, and realized the sound I heard wasn't just machinery. It was a choir of whispers, thousands of voices layered over one another, sobbing and pleading behind the glass doors. I looked into the nearest washer, and my blood turned to ice. It wasn't clothes spinning inside the soapy black froth. It was hair, long, matted tresses of human hair, swirling around a pale, bloated face that pressed against the glass. The eyes were wide, white and vacant, looking through me into a void I couldn't see. I backed away, stumbling into the machine behind me, which let out a metallic shriek of protest. From the shadows between the aisles, things began to move, sluggish gray shapes that mimicked the posture of men. They were tall and spindly, their limbs elongated like pulled taffy, their skin the color of wet newspaper. They didn't have faces, just smooth, concave surfaces where features should be, draped in rags that might have once been clothes. They were the staff, the cleaners of this wretched, forgotten dimension. One of them tilted its head, a wet, clicking sound echoing from its throat as it sensed my presence. It held a heavy, rusted bucket filled with that black oil, and it began to glide toward me across the water. Something else is being washed in these machines, I whispered to myself, the realization chilling my soul. And it's not clothes. I turned and ran, my feet heavy in the black sludge, the splashing sounds echoing like gunshots in the vast hall. Every machine I passed was filled with the same horrific cargo, limbs, memories, and the discarded remains of people who had wandered too far. The air grew colder, thick with a mist that tasted of iron and salt. I saw a light in the distance, a familiar harsh white glow that looked like a doorway. It was the dryer I had fallen through, a circular portal of sanity hanging in the middle of the dark. But the staff was closing in, their long fingers scraping against the metal machines, creating a cacophony of screeching steel. I reached the portal, the heat of the real world beginning to prickle against my freezing skin. I grabbed the edge of the metal drum, pulling myself upward with the last of my strength. Behind me, a cold, leathery grip fastened around my ankle, dragging me back toward the black water. I kicked wildly, my boot connecting with something soft and wet, and I heard a low, gurgling hiss. The grip loosened just enough for me to lunge forward, tumbling out onto the linoleum floor of the 5th Street Laundromat. I scrambled away from the machine, gasping for air, my lungs burning with the scent of clean detergent. The dryer door was still open, the red flannel shirt sitting innocently at the front of the drum. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands shaking so hard I could barely move the latch. I looked down at my hands and saw the black oil staining my skin, thick and impossible to wipe away. I left my clothes there, I left everything, and ran out into the cool morning air, not stopping until I reached my apartment. I spent 3 hours in the shower, scrubbing until my skin was raw and bleeding. But the smell of that black water never truly left my nose. And sometimes, when I pass a window at night, I don't see my reflection. I see those infinite aisles, the gray figures, and the pale faces spinning in the dark. Reality is a thin fabric, and mine has been ripped beyond repair. If you ever find yourself in a laundromat at 4 a.m, listen closely to the machines. If the hum starts to sound like a sob, walk out the door. And whatever you do, never reach into the back for something you've lost, because 7 a.m. is always looking for something new to wash.